Good morning everybody. Welcome to Malden District Council and this licensing subcommittee on Monday the 9th of August 2021. We sit today under the Licensing Act 2003 to hear an application made under the Act. My name is Councillor Mark Durham and I've been appointed Chairman for this meeting. Before we commence the business of the meeting, there are some housekeeping issues to run through as usual. First of all, please make sure your microphone remains muted and actually your camera is irrelevant because we are meeting face to face for the first time in 18 months. So we haven't got the, I think you're muted issues. Members, we are streaming this meeting live and being present at this meeting, you're giving your consent to be recorded. And we don't need to worry about the hands up feature on Zoom or Teams, so just please indicate appropriately when you wish to speak, and if you wish to remove your mask while speaking, please do. Item 3 are apologies for absence, and I understand that I'm just going to turn my phone on to mute. We have no apologies. Item 4, disclosure of interest. So we have to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests related to items of business on this agenda, having regard to paragraph 6 to 8 inclusive of the Code of Conduct for members. And members, you are also reminded to disclose such interest if you become aware should the need arise during the meeting. I will kick off. I have a non-pecuniary interest. I am a personal licence holder and have been a Justice's on licence holder for about 30 years. Just out of interest and for the purpose of openness and transparency, I did a company check on the applicant, and it appears that we share the same surname. So, and I'd like to assure everybody that that was a surprise to me, as I'm sure it was a surprise to the applicant when he just heard who I was this morning, and we are not related in any way, shape or form. So any other disclosures of interest? We have none. So we move on to item 5. This is the application for a new premises licence at Riverside Park Station Road, Burnham on Crouch. This is found on pages 5 to 36 of your agenda, and I refer everybody to the aid memoir on page 2 of the agenda, which details the procedures we're going to follow this morning. Can I ask everybody to check with everybody that you've read the officer's report and appendices and the evidence submitted, which has been circulated prior to the meeting. If anybody has any late documentation in support of the application, this can only be introduced with the consent of all parties. Okay, members, you have read and digested? Yes, thank you very much. I think that's quite clear. Members, a reminder, if you wish to speak on this item, please make it known by attracting my attention. I now call on Ms Latimer to provide a brief outline of this application, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for a new premises licence having regard to representations received and the requirement to promote the 4 licensing objectives. Recommendation that the licensing subcommittee determines the application for a new premises licence at Riverside Park, Burnham on Crouch, taking into consideration the options that are available as detailed in section 4.1 below. Members are requested to consider an application by Bars for Events Limited made under section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for a new premises licence in respect of Riverside Park, having regard to the representations received and the requirement to promote the 4 licensing objectives: the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, the protection of children from harm. The application for a premises licence was received on the 18th of June 2021 and correctly advertised by the placing of blue notices at the premises and publication in a local newspaper. The public notice was correctly displayed on the premises for a period of 28 days commencing the day after submission of the application. The premises licence application from Bars for Events Limited applies for the below activities: The completed application form, together with a plan of the proposed premises, as attached as Appendix A to this report. In processing this application, the Licensing Department, in accordance with the Act, sent a copy of the full application to each of the responsible authorities as listed below. Responses to the consultation have been received from Essex Police, who agreed conditions with the applicant. A copy of the agreed conditions is attached as Appendix B. No other comments were received from any other responsible authorities. 5 representations have been received from members of the public. The representations are attached as Appendix C to this report. Members are advised that they have the following options when determining this application. Grant the application on the terms and conditions applied for. Grant the application on the terms and conditions applied for, modified to such extent as considered appropriate to promote the licensing objectives. Refuse the application in whole or in part. The committee is reminded that the applicant or any person making representation in relation to this matter may appeal the decision of the council to the Magistrates' Court. That concludes my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms Latimer. Okay, I now invite the applicant, Mr Durham, that sounds strange, to make an opening statement. Mr Durham, if you'd like to go ahead and present to the panel.
Thank you, Mr Durham. That also sounds strange. My name's Chris Durham, the applicant. I put the application in following being approached by Malden Council to come up with something to put into Riverside Park, following over a number of years them receiving requests from Burnham residents for something to add to the park, beauty and attraction, to which we came up with the idea of Riverside Cafe Bar, which, as the committee, I'm sure, is aware, has now been operating under temporary events notices 3 days a week for the last 6 weeks, with no issues that I've been made aware of at all. What it's become apparent is that it is doing exactly what it set out to do, which would be a coffee and food-led establishment, not an alcohol-led establishment, and that it is one that doesn't need to go late into the evening. As the committee may be aware, we've agreed with the police and the licensing to reduce the closing times at the weekends from 10 o'clock to 9:30, and indeed on the temporary events notices we only went till 9:30 anyway, but only on 2 occasions do we even open till 9 o'clock because it just wasn't warranted. So we're more than happy to just reduce that to 9:30, and having read through the representations from the public, it's obviously apparent that they are concerned about late night drinking in the park and that sort of thing, as we are. We don't want to promote that, which is again why we're happy to reduce that to 9:30, so that people are long gone, and indeed as the nights draw in, we have no intention of opening after dark, as again within the representations it mentions about lack of lighting and that sort of thing. We haven't put any lighting in. We don't want to be open after dark. Literally the idea is it's an afternoon and early evening experience to experience the beauty of the park and the River Crouch, for people just to sit quietly, have a coffee and a bacon sandwich, maybe a glass of wine and a cheese platter, and then move on and carry on with the rest of their day or evening as they see fit. That concludes my opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Durham. Are you going to call any witnesses in support of your application?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Ms Bird, do we have any responsible authority representation?
No, Chairman, we don't.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So, members, a few of the questions that I was going to ask that I've written down have actually been answered. So it's your opportunity to question the applicant now. One thing I'd like to comment or question, because I haven't been down there, the plan consists of an aerial photograph with a white square in it, which is not really the most informative, I have to say. Could you just describe to the panel what the building is, or no, the nature of the premises, please?
Basically, within that area, which is a 30 metre by 30 metre area, we cite a the cafe bar, which is a trailer that opens out. It is black in colour so that it's not obtrusive. It's not sort of garish with bright colours and that sort of thing. It then, in front of that, is some park benches, some of which have been supplied kindly by the council, some by ourselves. All wooden benches, again, to keep with the ambience of the park, all within that area. And then obviously we close it up, and we generally remove the unit on the days that we aren't open.
Oh, okay. So that was again answering one of my questions. So it's not left on site.
It's not left on site. It is at the moment, because we have some access issues that ourselves and the council are addressing, because we were going to be coming in across the car park adjacent to the yacht club, but the yacht club and the council don't seem to be able to agree that that is allowed. The council are meant to be opening up an existing access route to be easier to get on and off, because at the moment the unit is coming up the steep bank, which isn't ideal, and with the weather the way it is, it's for safety reasons. Okay. I've sort of locked it up tight and left it there, but as soon as that access is done, it'll get removed.
Okay. So just going back to my point, so it's a movable trailer that's located somewhere in that sort of square, depending on where you happen to park it that day?
It is, yes, but basically it always backs on to the hedge, to the existing picnic area that has been there for a number of years. Okay. Mainly because the wind is then onto the back of us, so it requires shelter rather than
sure.
Everything blowing around in the unit.
And just another question, so you've been selling alcohol under a temporary event notice for about 6 weeks?
That is correct.
Okay. Members, Councillor Stilts. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask you just a couple of questions? Your actual timings you've got on here is 8:30. Are you actually looking at selling alcohol from 8:30 in the morning, or are you going to sell that later?
If you look, the alcohol sales start at 11 o'clock.
Lovely,
the premises open at 8:30, so we can do coffee and bacon sandwiches and that sort of thing.
That's fine. And the area, have you actually got it roped off or marked out to say this is the area that you will be trading in, or is that the whole of the park that you've got for trading? We
haven't roped it off, but because of the 18 benches we've got there, it's very specific within that. But what I have done is, where the notice was, is then sort of I know where the line is, so we don't encroach onto other parts of the park. But I'm happy to put something up if the committee sees fit for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. As you said, you didn't plan to serve alcohol after dusk, after dark. Would you be open to amending the condition to include daylight hours only? I don't know how we do that technically. I'm just asking if you would consider that.
More than happy, because I've got no intention of being open after dusk.
Thank you, and thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Siddle.
Thank you. So one of the things you said was about enjoying the area. So yeah, in terms of after dark, what's your definition of after dark? Because after dark might mean one thing to one person and something completely different to somebody else.
Basically, is, as we all know, once the sort of sun goes down, there's still light for probably about half an hour. As soon as the sun goes down, within 15 minutes, half an hour, we would close.
So over the last 6 weeks, which you've had the temporary licence, what sort of hours have you been closing?
We have only actually gone to 9 o'clock twice.
Okay.
And obviously at the moment it's sort of, I think dusk is about 9:30, 9:45. It's slowly drawing in. But we only did it twice because it hasn't been warranted. But also as the nights draw in, obviously the timings will get less and less. I'd also like to point out that at the moment we can only operate when we've got a contract in place with the council, which that contract ends on Sunday the 3rd of October, I believe. So obviously as the nights draw in, you know, obviously it becomes 4 o'clock during the winter. At that point we won't be open at all. Well, that's not the intention of being open at this stage, but that's consultation to see how this has gone and how the council and ourselves see it moving forward.
I'm not aware of the contract at all that the operator has with the council. How long has that been in operation?
From the beginning,
So, but when did you start operating
the
then?
first weekend in July.
Okay, so this year.
Yes.
Okay. In terms of this license, in terms of this thing, why have you now identified that you want to sell alcohol when you didn't before?
No, we were always intending on selling
Okay.
alcohol. It was always going to be coffee-led,
Right.
but the idea was for people to be able to sit and enjoy a local pint of ale or a local wine, whilst sort of, as I say, taking in the ambience, and the menu sort of includes sort of cheese platters and that sort of thing. So it's much an experience rather than a case of let's have an ease up on anything else, which is why I've also said categorically no music. You know, it's about sitting there and enjoying the surroundings.
Okay. And in terms of sort of volumes at the moment, what sort of volumes have you been selling?
So it's been 80% coffee, soft drinks and food,
Right.
20% alcohol. And so we've probably only had a handful of people have more than one alcoholic drink, because it is literally working exactly as I anticipated, which people come in, they have a bite to eat, or they just sit and have a pint, have a natter and move on. It's not about sitting there all day and that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, when hopefully the weather gets better, and hopefully we do get the licence, the idea is I want throughput of customers so that more people can experience it, not just have the tables taken up by just a few people sitting there all day, because that doesn't work. That's not what it's about.
Drinking beer has a different effect on someone's body than having a cup of tea or coffee. So in terms of the need for toilet facilities and things like that, do you see any issues? Because I think at the moment you're using the council toilets, is that correct?
We are using the council toilets. We have a key for the toilets so that because the council tends to shut them about 6-7 o'clock, and their cleaner contract means the cleaners have to lock them. We then go down and open them up again and lock them on our way out. And we tell all our customers those are the toilets there, and they're more than happy to walk down there. But in general, what we found is that most people, because they're only stopping for one drink, there has been no need, and they have just moved on or been walking that way anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Durham, I was just looking for details of the DPS. I'm assuming that's yourself, is it?
It is, yes. That was within the application.
Okay. And are you there the whole time? I'm assuming not.
At the moment, yes, I have been. But the intention isn't that I will be there all the time, but it is to have a personal licence holder there. But all my staff have also been trained. We have our own training schedule and questionnaire, which all the staff that were working this weekend have passed.
And I think I recall that your company's been trading since 2005, was that
That's
right?
correct,
Yeah,
yes.
so
Yeah.
you're obviously all
Yes.
well aware of
I'm not sure the word
responsibilities.
trading in the last 18 months is correct, but
No,
yes.
that's fine, but no, I think that's important to know. Could you just for the benefit of the panel, just give us a little bit of an idea of the sorts of things that you are selling in terms of food?
Yes, we doing sort of bacon and sausage sandwiches, using bacon and sausages from the Secret Butcher in the district. We then do a selection of other sandwiches, cakes, scones, ploughmans, cheese platters and afternoon tea.
Okay. Members, have you got any more? That's for stilts.
Just a couple of questions. Are you buying all of your stuff? Is that all being sourced locally?
We are doing our best to source it locally. All our bread is coming from Burnham Bakery. All our veg is coming, I can't remember the name of it, but just up from the bakery going towards, up the road north, there is a roadside greengrocer, and they do a lot of their own growing. So we're using all our sort of fresh veg and that sort of thing from there. The meat is all, and our mature and extra mature cheddar is coming from the Secret Butcher. Our beer, mainly from Crouch Vale Brewery at the moment. It doesn't warrant using more because it would not selling that much alcohol. Wines are generally for Newhall vineyards or vineyards. We have contacted almost all the vineyards in the district, but Newhall is the only one that actually got back to us. All the rest didn't email us back at all. So wherever possible, or we've got the gin from Mighty Oak Brewery, they're well samphire.
And the other thing I was going to ask is, you say that of an evening you have the key for the toilets and that you open it and lock it up. Does that also go for arrangement of cleaning them? So if somebody does go in there and make a mess, who is checking those toilets and
I
cleaning?
check it before we've closed up, and so far there hasn't been
Thank you.
anything. Having spoken to our customers, I think only about 2 of our customers actually needed to go down there later in the evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of your experience so far the last few weeks, what are your peak times and when are you busiest?
So we're busiest between sort of 9:30 and 11 for tea, coffee and bacon sausage sandwiches, and then generally between 1 and about 3:30, 4, which again is mainly coffee and cake, a few sort of odd glasses of wine and the odd pint. And we've had one weekend with actually really decent weather, and we did have a sort of third peak time, which was about 6:30, 7 o'clock. Literally people walking their dogs and have sat down, had a coffee or a glass of wine. One gentleman did have a pint, stayed for a cheese platter or shared cheese platter, and then moved on. And on those occasions, by 8 o'clock, I think, we only had 6 people left.
Okay.
So.
And in terms of attracting customers, what have you done to do that?
All we've done is sort of some advertising on social media and an A board on the quay sort of pointing to us. But low key, we want it to build by word of mouth and not sort of big advertising campaign and that sort of thing, because we do want to attract the right sort of clientele that are going to sit and enjoy the park. And we've priced ourselves for that as well. So we're more expensive on the coffee and on the food and on the alcohol, as far as I'm aware, definitely than the pubs and the other cafes in the town on purpose.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask the officers?
Of course you can. Yes, councillors.
So in terms of the hours and in terms of this adjustment of hours, in terms of closing around dusk, just after dark, what's your view on that?
Can I just say, first of all, I'm sure my colleagues will have something to say on that. Trouble with, although I've seen conditions about closing at dusk is very unclear.
Exactly.
And I think, Councillor Siddle, you mentioned that it means one thing to one and something else to some. And I wouldn't advise you to put in a condition about closure at dusk. It's very difficult for Mr. McDermott's team to actually enforce that and to know when that's the case. I think you need to put in a specific time, and that's what obviously the applicant has done. So if you're satisfied with the times he's given and the evidence he's given, I wouldn't recommend changing it to dusk.
Yeah, that was my concern.
Well, yeah, I could just take... Yes, I'll come back to you, Councillor Thompson. But, of course, there are published sunrise and sunset times.
There are.
So I'm assuming you could, for example, and I'm only just saying for example, stipulate 1 hour after sunset, because that is a prescribed time that changes throughout the year. Is that technically possible?
It is technically possible, but it complicates things. You're absolutely right, Chairman. There are published times. But then, if there is, for example, an issue of enforcement, if you've got a clear time, set time, that everybody knows, all the staff know what time it is that are working there, there's no issue about having to look on the internet if you can get access or what are the closing times. It's just so much clearer, Chairman, if you have a set time for purposes of enforcement, and not just enforcement, for the staff themselves to know and the public to know as well.
I see the officers nodding in. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I was just asking on, whether the applicant was open to it, and I did say I didn't know how this was going to be done technically, and I assumed we'd do that in another part of the meeting, but I was just finding out if the applicant would object if we came up with such a plan, but if such a plan is already shot down, well, so be it. Thank you.
Yes, of course, Mr. Dunn.
May I make a suggestion, particularly as we're mainly looking at being open during the summer, is that we maybe say that it's 21:30 from the beginning of May to the end of September, but if we were to open during the winter, that say we then put a different stipulation for the 6 months there of say 7 o'clock or 1900, just to make it clearer, to try and take on your point. I do take that on board, and also take on board about the staff and that sort of thing. As I say, we don't want to be open after dark, but if we can come up with something between us for the wording to be correct, to make it easy for everybody, then I'm more than open
Well,
to that.
yeah, we after this we can take legal advice on what is, what is legal and also what is workable. So we will do that in accordingly. Can I just ask perhaps Mr. Geller that so this has been trading for 6 weeks, selling alcohol. Do we know that have there been any complaints, or have there been any complaints to the licensing officer regarding?
Not as far as I'm aware. That there's no complaints about this particular venue. One thing I would say is, and it's referenced in one of the appendices, the council are looking at bringing in a public space protection order for that area. The idea behind the public space protection order is that it's basically there to try and tackle any possible antisocial behaviour that could arise. So in terms of people drinking responsibly, fine, carry on. That's, we're trying to encourage people to behave in a positive way. If, for example, we feel that, people are leaving, causing nuisance, alcohol-related nuisance, there will be conditions to tackle that we can tap into and use.
So we can, or we will apply for a PSPA.
It's currently going through the stage of being finalised. So we've completed the public consultation. That's being assessed. I can give you early indications that the public view was very positive towards it. So it's just a question of getting that final report together and then rolling that out.
So that will actually give the authority more teeth to deal with any issues.
Absolutely. So in terms of the conditions related to alcohol, the first instance you can ask someone to surrender what they've got to drink and dispose of it, and the second instance you can then fine them if the antisocial behaviour continues. So again, it's about encouraging good behaviour and providing additional enforcement support.
Okay. Sorry, Ms. Latimer, did you have has anybody been to your department with any issues?
I was just going to confirm that we haven't received any complaints in licensing either.
Any issues?
Thank you, Chair.
And I'm just going to ask one legal point. So we are considering a premises licence, Mr. Quelch, for, I'll rephrase that. Are we considering a premises licence for anything in that white square, or are we granting a premises licence for the mobile unit? And I'm just mindful of the fact...
What the applications is, what was the area that was applied for? I haven't seen the application, well, I have seen the application form, but the map I assume is that white block, that's the application site.
This is our assumption, yes.
Yeah, so that white block would be the licensable area, as it were.
So that is what you're granting a licence for or not for, and you can obviously do a partial grant as well, but that's what the application is for. So any premises licence you grant will be just for that area.
But it would also be a premises licence applied to the area, not necessarily this applicant. Am I correct?
Well, it's for the premises licence only, as you know, Chairman, better than I probably, from your own experience. It's a premises licence to a holder of that licence. That premises licence connects into the application. That application has, from what I understand from Ms. Latimer, that white area is the extent to which the licensable activities can apply. They cannot apply outside of it. Now, if someone walks away with alcohol, of course they can do that. As you can in a pub, you can walk outside and you can walk away from the pub.
that I accept, but a premises licence is exactly that. It refers to a premises, and operators obviously then have to have a personal licence, which moves with the personal licence holder. But the premises licence is applicable to the building or the area, and should that change hands, there is a transfer procedure to change that. But as the applicant has already said, he only has a contract with this authority until the end of September. If this authority doesn't grant him one for next year, what is the situation regarding, there will be an extant premises licence for that white blob.
As you said, Chairman, I know you know all these things even better than I do. Then an application can be made for a transfer of the name of the person operating that premises licence. So if there's some contractual difficulties between Mr. Durham and Malvern District Council, for some reason or other they want to part company, then obviously a transfer application can be put in. But it will obviously be, I think your point, Chairman, probably is, I think I know where you're going, Chairman. This isn't an application by Malvern District Council. This is an application, even though it's the Malvern District Council's land, this is an application by Mr. Durham. So, yeah, he wouldn't have to, my understanding, and Mr. Atkin will know this better than me, he would need to give consent for that transfer to take place. So if he didn't give consent, then if the district council wanted to continue the relationship, and I think this is outside the terms of this actual application, but just to give you a wider picture, if the district council wanted to continue a relationship with somebody else, then that person, unless Mr. Durham was prepared to consent to a transfer, they would have to put in another application.
Right, okay. My concern, and you're quite right, Mr. Quelch, is, Mr. Durham has got a long-established company, clearly operating in the correct way, but there are other operators out there that may not be quite as vigilant as this particular applicant. And my concern is that we're opening the floodgates in subsequent years to somebody who may not be quite as conscientious, and the licence transfer for whatever may go to somebody else. Put it this way, it used to be an awful lot easier back in my day when you stood in front of a magistrate and got a justice's on licence.
But as you say, Chairman, and I know as you know this from your own experience and knowledge, you can't take that into account.
No, I'm aware of
that is not a relevant. You can't imagine what might be happening.
Yeah.
In the same way, if I might just give advice to the committee in public, so people here and maybe the people making the interested parties are listening to this, in their Appendix C representations, they haven't given any evidence that you can consider to be evidence of any public order issues. All they've done is put forward fears, and those aren't really evidence. And under the guidance, the 182 guidance from the government, that says when you determine applications at Chapter 9.43 of the 182 guidance, the authorities determine should be evidence-based. And unfortunately, the members of the public have not put forward, in my view, as a legal advisor, this is for you to decide that, but I don't see anything of an evidence-based representation.
Hence the questions whether anything's been reported to us. So, clearly, I think the police would have made representation had they received any issues. So, yes, Councillor Stills.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Geller, please?
Of course you can.
Mr. Geller, can you clarify for me that if we bring in a public order thing on this thing, that covers the rest of that area in that park, and therefore could be enforceable by your officers if somebody was to walk off with a drink and cause nuisance?
Yes, it does. So the way public space protection orders typically work, within town centre areas where there's pubs or, parks where there's sort of retail facilities, it covers the whole area. So in effect, it also covers the area where the licensable activity takes place. Obviously, the licensable activity is still allowed to take place. The act of antisocial behaviour only occurs, you know, when it's been deemed that something has happened that it shouldn't be. So, for example, if someone is being rowdy while they're drinking, it might be happening within that squared area. They're still eligible for enforcement activity by us. So, absolutely, we can continue to enforce both within the white area and the wider area.
So the curtilage for the PSPO is the whole of Riverside Park?
The whole of Riverside.
Okay. Were you aware of that, Mr. Durham?
I wasn't when I put the application in, but through the representations I was, and I think it's brilliant.
You think so? Well, it clearly is a significant factor. Yes. Yeah.
So another question for the officers. Are there any concerns regarding environmental health or anything like that at all? Has anything come forward in terms of from the council?
So far, there's nothing that we've been made aware of.
Okay, thank you. And a question from Mr. Durham. At the moment, in what containers is your alcohol sold in?
If people are sitting at the tables, we're using reusable plastic cups, so that they don't just go to landfill and that sort of thing. If people want to walk away with alcohol, then as the police, although with the temporary events notice we don't have to do this, we have been abiding by what the police have asked, which is that it be in a lidded container. Okay. But so far, I think we've had 2 people want to wander off with a PIMS, and one person had sat with somebody and had a cheese platter, and they wanted to go home and continue with the same wine, and said, could we buy a bottle to take away, which we obviously did, so that was completely sealed.
Okay. In terms of the hours, and so I'm going to see it from your point of view in terms of these hours, and perhaps in September we have a fantastic Indian summer, and you know it gets dark quite early in September, and but it's a really hot evening, and we then say, okay, but your hours are whatever time that we agreed to, and you want to open then. So immediately in terms of that situation, you as a premises holder are in a difficult situation, because you want to stay open, but we've changed your hours to an earlier time. So I have grave concerns about us fiddling about with these hours in terms of an officer's point of view, and then enforcing it, and also in terms of the practical point of view from you. So I have definitely concerns about those things, and being too vague about it from both us as operators, and also in terms of your opportunities. In terms of that, and hopefully you can see that point. Because we might have a very good September.
Hope so. Have you any comment, Mr. Durham, before you?
The simple thing is this, is that there is, other than our lighting within the unit, there is no lighting there. There's no easy way to put lighting in there, so in that area. So this is why we intend on shutting before dark. It doesn't matter how busy it gets. And thank you for your comments at the end of the day. Yes, it would be lovely to have the situation that all of 18 or 20 tables are taken and it's getting dark. It's like, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could stay open? But it's not practical because of no light. We won't be able to get to the tables and that sort of thing. We want to get my staff and myself off-site safely, and that needs to be as it's getting dark, not once it's dark. So the other thing, just I'm trying to remember what I was going to say now. Coming into the issues of possibly if the relationship with council broke down with myself, is that, and I don't know the legalities of this, but obviously we can't operate at the moment unless the council say you can operate on our land. Is if it was legal to do so, maybe there was a condition on the licence that licence is only valid if alongside it there is a contract that we're with the council that we're able to trade, which then means if it did break down, actually the licence wouldn't be valid. I don't know what the legalities are with that. Did you understand what I was trying to say there?
That's a legal point we can discuss afterwards. I think looking at the hours, and I know that's a sort of thorny issue. I mean, for the last goodness knows how long, I've run events on August bank holiday weekend, and by 9:30 it's pretty much the last knockings, isn't it? So into September it's pitch dark at 9:30. So, okay, members, have you any final questions for Mr. Durham or the officers? You're entitled to make a closing statement, sir.
Other than to thank you for your time and hope that you see this favourably, I think we've covered everything and addressed the concerns as far as I'm aware. So thank you very much.
Yep, thank you very much. I think members all said what they wanted to. In accordance with point 10, this meeting will now close. And what we do now, Mr. Durham, is we discuss between ourselves to make our decision. We can take legal advice if we need to clarify a legal point. You will find out within 5 days of our decision. So, members, thank you very much for your time. We will have a little discussion shortly. So we're going to close this meeting, formal meeting, at 11:15, and we will meet shortly where we're sat. Actually, if that's so, we'll stay in this room. Mr. Durham, thank you very much for your time. It's good to find out there's another Durham in the events business, even though we're not related. Are you